Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a camera suspended above a quiet river island. The year is not 2026, not even 1026, but somewhere around 250 BC. There are no boulevards, no lights, no towers piercing the sky, only mist water and a small tribe of fishermen known as the Parisii. This is where our time lapse begins, not with grandeur but with fragility. And perhaps that is what makes the story of Paris so captivating. It was never destined to become eternal, and yet it did. In this imagined sequence of time, centuries flicker like frames in a film. The humble settlement, once called Lutetia, slowly takes shape along the banks of the Seine. Roman legions arrive in 52 BC, bringing order, roads, and stone, the first true transformation of the city. And here, I must pause as an author and confess, there is something deeply poetic about conquest shaping beauty. It is uncomfortable, even contradictory, yet history rarely asks for our moral comfort. As the centuries accelerate, Lutetia grows into a Roman town, expanding from the island to the left bank. Markets appear, baths rise, voices echo in Latin, but empires like Caesar's do not last. By the 4th century, the city takes a new name, Paris, as if shedding its old skin. Time continues to race forward. The fall of Rome does not destroy the city. Instead, it reshapes it. In 508, the Frankish king Clovis makes Paris his capital, anchoring its destiny in power and politics. If you were watching this as a time-lapse, you would notice something fascinating. Paris never truly stops. It bends, it breaks, it rebuilds, but it never pauses. By the early Middle Ages, wooden houses multiply, churches rise, and narrow streets twist like veins through the city. Viking ships appear on the Seine, threatening destruction, yet Paris survives even siege and fire. And here is my second reflection. Survival, not beauty, is the true foundation of Paris. The elegance we admire today was built on centuries of endurance. The camera pulls back. The city grows denser. Bells ring across rooftops. A new era is coming, one of learning, faith, and ambition. And this is only the beginning. The time-lapse accelerates, and suddenly, the air itself seems to change. The Middle Ages unfold not as darkness, as they are often described, but as a slow ignition of intellect and faith. By the 12th century, Paris becomes a magnet for scholars, a place where ideas gather like storm clouds before lightning. At the heart of this transformation rises the magnificent Notre Dame Cathedral. Construction begins in 1163, and in our imagined time-lapse, its towers climb skyward in mere seconds. Stone by stone, arch by arch, it reshapes the skyline, a symbol not only of devotion, but of human ambition reaching beyond its limits. Nearby, something quieter yet equally powerful takes form. The University of Paris. Students from across Europe arrive, filling the streets with debate, curiosity, and restless energy. Latin phrases float through the air, and for the first time, Paris becomes not just a city of survival, but a city of thought. Here, I find myself pausing again. It is tempting to romanticize this era, cloaked scholars, candlelit manuscripts, but the reality was harsher. Life was short, disease was constant, and knowledge itself was fragile. And yet, people still chose to seek it. That, to me, is extraordinary. As centuries flicker past, the city tightens within its walls. Markets overflow, bridges multiply, and the Ile de la Cité pulses like a beating heart. Then, almost abruptly, shadows creep in. The 14th century brings the Black Death. In a time-lapse, it is a sudden dimming. Movement slows, streets empty, and silence replaces noise. But Paris does what it always does. It endures. By the late Middle Ages, construction resumes, life returns, and the city begins to stretch outward again. Gothic spires dominate the horizon, and the rhythm of daily life grows louder, more complex, more human. And then, as if the camera itself senses a shift, the tone changes. The Renaissance approaches. You would see new colors emerging, brighter fabrics, wider streets, and an unmistakable confidence. Kings begin to reshape Paris not just as a place to live, but as a stage for power. Palaces rise, art flourishes. The city starts to look intentional, and this is where the story becomes even more fascinating, because Paris is no longer just surviving history. It is beginning to control it. Now the time-lapse surges forward with renewed intensity. The Renaissance does not arrive in Paris as a quiet awakening. It arrives like a declaration. The city begins to reflect not only faith and survival, but taste, style, and authority. Royal influence reshapes the urban landscape. The medieval fortress of the Louvre Palace transforms into a refined residence, its heavy defensive walls softened by symmetry and elegance. In our accelerated vision, towers dissolve into facades, and courtyards expand as if breathing for the first time. And yet, beauty rarely comes without tension. The 16th century is marked by conflict. Religious wars tear through France, and Paris becomes both a center of culture and a stage for violence. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre flashes across the timeline like a sudden storm. Chaos, fear, and bloodshed interrupt the city's graceful transformation. As an author, I cannot ignore this contradiction. Paris, so often seen as a symbol of romance, is equally a witness to human cruelty. Perhaps that duality is what makes it real, not an ideal, but a mirror. Time does not slow. The 17th century introduces order. Under kings like Louis XIV, the idea of centralized power becomes visible in stone. Wide squares, formal gardens, and planned spaces begin to replace the tangled medieval streets. The city is no longer growing organically. It is being designed. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares us for what comes next. The late 18th century erupts. In a time-lapse, the French Revolution is a violent rupture. Crowds flood the streets, symbols of monarchy fall, and the skyline itself seems to tremble. The storming of the Bastille happens in an instant, yet its consequences echo for decades. Here, I pause longer than before. Revolutions are often simplified into moments, but they are not moments. They are transformations of identity. Paris does not just change physically, it changes psychologically. The people who walk its streets begin to see themselves differently, not as subjects, but as citizens. And from that point on, the city can never return to what it was. As the 19th century dawns, the camera pulls back again. Smoke rises from industry. Movement accelerates. The rhythm of life becomes mechanical, almost relentless. Something enormous is about to reshape Paris once more. Not through war this time, but through vision. The 19th century begins, and with it, Paris transforms more radically than ever before. If our time-lapse had sound, this is where you would hear it intensify. Hammers striking stone, wheels grinding over cobblestones, the low hum of industry merging with human ambition. Enter Georges Eugène Haussmann, a man whose vision would redefine the very structure of the city. Under the audace of Napoleon III, medieval Paris is carved open. Entire neighborhoods vanish in seconds in our accelerated view, replaced by wide boulevards, uniform facades, and long, straight avenues that seem to stretch into the future. It is difficult not to feel conflicted here. On one hand, Haussmann gives Paris the elegance we recognize today: space, light, symmetry. On the other, thousands are displaced, history erased to make way for progress. I often wonder, is a city still itself after such transformation? Or does it become something entirely new? The camera glides forward. Gas lamps flicker to life, then multiply into constellations across the streets. Cafes appear, filled with writers, artists, and dreamers. Paris becomes not just a capital, but a cultural heartbeat of Europe. And then, rising almost suddenly in our time lapse, the unmistakable silhouette of the Eiffel Tower pierces the sky during the Exposition Universelle. At first, many despise it. Yes, even this symbol of Paris was once considered an eyesore, a temporary structure, a curiosity. And yet, here it stands, outlasting criticism, becoming iconic. There is a lesson hidden in that, I think. Time has a way of deciding what we cannot. The 20th century arrives abruptly. War darkens the frame. During World War I and later World War II, Paris exists under the shadow of uncertainty. In 1940, occupation begins. The city continues to stand, but its spirit feels restrained. And yet, even here, Paris refuses to lose itself. Liberation in 1944 flashes like a sudden burst of light. Crowds return, voices rise, and life floods back into the streets. It is not just a military victory. It is an emotional one. The time lapse accelerates again. Cars replace horses. Neon replaces gaslight. Modern glass structures begin to contrast with centuries-old stone. And still, somehow, it all fits together. Not perfectly, but harmoniously. Now we approach the present, and the question becomes unavoidable. After 2,000 years of constant change, what exactly is Paris? Is it its architecture, its history, its people, or is it something less tangible, something that cannot be captured even in the fastest time lapse? Perhaps the answer lies not in what Paris is, but in how it endures.
Let me show you this one.
And now the time lapse slows.
No, that is terrible.
For the first time in our journey, Paris no longer feels like it is rushing forward. It feels like it is breathing. The modern city unfolds beneath us, a layered landscape where centuries coexist in the same frame. On one street corner, a cafe from the 19th century still serves espresso beneath ornate balconies. A few steps away, glass towers reflect the sky like fragments of a different future. And beneath it all, unseen but ever present, lie Roman roads, medieval stones, and forgotten foundations of Lutetia. This is what Paris has become, not a replacement of itself, but a composition of every version it has ever been. We drift over the Seine River once again. The same water that carried fishermen, Roman ships, medieval trade, royal barges, revolutionaries, and now tourist boats. It does not change, it simply continues. And I think that is the quiet truth at the center of this 2,000-year journey. Paris was never built once. It was built repeatedly, layer upon layer, like memory taking physical form. As we rise higher, the city reveals its modern identity. The skyline is no longer dominated by a single structure, but by dialogue between old and new, stone and steel, permanence and reinvention. Even the once controversial Eiffel Tower now feels less like an intrusion and more like an exclamation mark at the end of a long sentence. And yet, despite all this transformation, something essential has remained unchanged. The streets still carry music, from accordion players near bridges, from distant laughter spilling out of cafes, from footsteps echoing on cobblestones worn smooth by centuries. Paris still invites people to walk, to pause, to look up. It still insists on being experienced slowly, even in a world that moves quickly. Here, I must offer my final reflection as the time lapse comes to an end. Cities are often mistaken for structures, but Paris is not a structure. It is a process, a continuous negotiation between destruction and creation, memory and ambition, chaos and design. Empires rose and fell here, ideas clashed, fires burned, revolutions reshaped everything. And yet, through every collapse, Paris did not vanish. It adapted. Now, in the present moment, we see not an endpoint, but a pause in motion. Because the truth is, the story of Paris is still being written. Every day, another frame is added to the time lapse, another life, another street renovation, another conversation in a cafe, another sunrise over the Seine. And so we return to where we began, not with certainty, but with wonder, a small settlement on an island, mist over water, and a question that has never truly been answered. How does something so fragile become eternal? Perhaps the answer is simple. It doesn't. It becomes timeless by never stopping its change.